I was standing at the counter of a small gas station, paying for a drink and a snack, when the cashier handed me my receipt. He didn't say a word, but his face looked pale and uneasy. I glanced down and saw a short message written in pen across the bottom of the paper. "Smile and leave. That man has your car keys." At first, I thought it was some kind of prank. My heart started pounding as I instinctively reached into my pocket, certain my keys were still there. But when I checked, my pocket was empty. My fingers brushed against nothing but fabric. My car keys were gone. I turned slowly, trying not to make a scene, and that's when I saw him, a man standing near the candy aisle, staring right at me. His eyes didn't move away when I looked back. It felt like the whole world suddenly went quiet, and my stomach dropped. That was the moment I realized something was very wrong. Before we dive into this story, make sure to subscribe and comment below where you're watching from, because this one will make you think twice about ever ignoring your instincts again. My name is Hannah Reed. I'm 30 years old, and I teach English at a local high school in Colorado. My life is pretty simple. I spend my weekdays grading papers, my weekends hiking, and I try to stay out of trouble. I'm not the kind of person who goes looking for danger, and I definitely don't expect it to find me. That Friday had been long. I'd driven 2 hours to visit my mom and was heading home late. It was already dark, and the road was quiet except for the hum of my car engine. I was exhausted and decided to stop at a gas station just off the highway to grab something to drink before the last stretch of the drive. The gas station was small, the kind of place you only notice when you need to. A single streetlight flickered above the pumps, and the cold air smelled faintly of rain. Inside, the store was quiet, except for a soft buzz from the soda fridge. There were only 2 other people inside, the cashier, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, and a man in his mid-30s standing near the back shelves, pretending to browse chips. I didn't pay much attention to him at first. I was tired, thinking about how nice it would be to get home, shower, and crawl into bed. I grabbed a soda and a granola bar, then walked up to the counter. The cashier barely met my eyes. His hands shook slightly as he scanned my things. I thought maybe he was just nervous or having a rough night. When he handed me the receipt, I smiled and reached for it. That's when I noticed it, words hastily written in dark blue ink at the bottom of the paper. "Smile and leave. That man has your car keys." I froze. My first reaction was disbelief. I even looked up at him, ready to ask what he meant, but he gave a tiny shake of his head and whispered, "Just go." My heart started to race. I laughed under my breath, thinking maybe he was joking or mistaken. My hand instinctively went to my coat pocket, where my keys always were. But when I reached in, the cold realization hit me. My pocket was empty. I checked my jeans, my purse, everywhere I could without looking suspicious. My keys were gone. I forced a small smile at the cashier, trying not to show panic. I took my things and walked toward the door as casually as I could. My mind was spinning. How could someone have taken my keys? I hadn't put my bag down. I hadn't even been near anyone. As I pushed open the glass door, the little bell above it chimed softly. The air outside felt heavier, colder. I could feel someone's eyes on me. I didn't dare turn around, but I caught a reflection in the door. The man from the snack aisle was walking toward me. I gripped the receipt so tightly it crumpled in my hand. My car was parked by the far pump, and all I could think about was getting inside and locking the doors. I forced myself to keep walking, acting calm, pretending I hadn't seen him move. Each step felt slower than the last. I reached the car and put my bag on the seat, pretending to search for something inside, but my heart was thudding so loudly I could barely think. I looked through the window at my reflection, and behind me, I saw his shadow. He was standing still, just a few feet away, watching me. Every nerve in my body told me to run, but I didn't know where to go. I couldn't drive. My keys were gone. The store behind me was the only place with light, and the man was between me and it. At that moment, I knew I had 2 options: either face him or find another way to get help. I took a deep breath, tightened my grip on the door handle, and made my choice. My breath quickened as I stood beside my car, pretending to look for something in my purse. I could feel his eyes on me, every second stretching longer than the last. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I knew any sudden movement would give me away. The parking lot was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. The gas station lights flickered faintly, casting long shadows across the pavement. I had never felt so exposed in my life. I decided to play along, hoping to look calm. I opened the passenger door and placed my drink inside, trying to act like nothing was wrong. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him slowly start walking toward me. He was tall, maybe mid-30s, wearing a faded brown jacket and jeans. His steps were unhurried, confident, like he had all the time in the world. That scared me more than anything. People with bad intentions rarely rush. They move like they already know how the story ends. My keys. He had my keys. The thought made my stomach twist. He could follow me home, get into my car whenever he wanted, or worse. I didn't even know how he'd taken them. Had he brushed past me in the store? Was he that close without me noticing? I felt sick just thinking about it. He stopped a few feet away and smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Everything all right, ma'am?" he asked, his tone casual but sharp underneath, like he was testing me. My throat went dry. I forced a smile back and said, "Yeah, just fine. Thanks." My voice sounded too high, too tight. He nodded slowly, glancing at my car door. "Need help with something?" I shook my head, gripping my bag strap tighter. "No, I'm good." He stared for a moment longer, his eyes flicking to my purse, then to my jacket pocket. I could feel my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Finally, he turned slightly and started walking toward the side of the lot. I didn't believe for a second that he was leaving. I looked toward the gas station. Through the window, I could see the cashier, Luis, still at the counter, his eyes wide and fixed on me. He gave a quick nod toward the door, motioning for me to come back inside. That small gesture was enough to make up my mind. I closed my car door slowly, as if I'd just changed my mind about driving. Then I turned back toward the store, walking at a steady pace. I didn't run. Running would have confirmed that I knew. Behind me, I heard footsteps again. They were faster this time. I gripped my phone tightly in my hand, praying I'd make it before he caught up. The bell over the gas station door chimed softly as I stepped inside, and before I could even turn around, Luis quickly locked the door. He leaned forward and whispered, "He's watching from outside. Stay down." My whole body shook as I crouched behind the counter. Luis picked up the phone with trembling fingers and started dialing. I heard him whisper to the dispatcher, "This is the Quick Mart off Route 17. There's a man outside following a customer. He's been stealing car keys. Please hurry." The words barely registered. My head was spinning too fast. I tried to peek through the window without being seen. The man was pacing near my car, scanning the lot like he was searching for something, or someone. Every time a car passed on the road, his head turned sharply. He was waiting. Luis hung up and whispered, "The police are on their way. Just stay down." We waited in silence. The minutes dragged like hours. I could hear the hum of the refrigerators, the buzzing of the lights, and my own shaky breathing. I tried to keep calm, but my mind raced through every possible outcome. What if he broke the door? What if he had a weapon? Then, the sound of metal scraping made me flinch. I glanced up just in time to see him bending near the driver's side of my car. He was unlocking it, using my keys. My stomach dropped. He wasn't leaving. He was getting in. Luis whispered, "He's trying to steal your car. Stay here." He picked up the phone again to update the police. But before he could speak, the man stood up and turned toward the store. For a few seconds, he just stared through the glass doors. Our eyes met, and it felt like the air in the room disappeared. His expression was blank, unreadable. Then he smiled, cold, deliberate, and started walking toward the door. I froze. Luis moved quickly, flicking off the store lights. "He can't see us clearly now," he whispered. The sudden darkness made the world feel smaller. We crouched behind the counter, barely breathing, as the man's shadow passed by the glass. He tugged lightly at the door handle. The lock held. He lingered there for what felt like forever, pressing his face close to the glass, peering in. My pulse pounded in my ears. I wanted to scream, but I knew I couldn't make a sound. Then, without warning, he turned and walked back toward his car. I dared to peek through the counter window again. He opened my car door, leaned inside for a moment, and then shut it. He climbed into his own vehicle, a black sedan parked a few spots away, and drove off slowly into the dark. Luis stayed quiet for a few more seconds before saying softly, "He's gone." I finally stood, shaking from head to toe. My knees felt weak. "What if he comes back?" I whispered. "The police are close," he said. "We'll stay inside until they get here." I pressed my palms against the counter, trying to steady myself. My car keys, my safety, my sense of normalcy, all of it had just been stolen and returned by a stranger in less than 10 minutes. I couldn't stop thinking about what might have happened if I hadn't looked at that note, if I hadn't checked my pocket in time. Those few seconds had changed everything. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was angry. I wanted answers. And when the real police arrived, I was ready to find out who that man was and why he had chosen me. The flashing blue lights appeared outside about 10 minutes later, washing over the glass doors of the gas station. The moment I saw them, my knees nearly gave out. Luis exhaled, his voice shaking as he said, "They're here." I didn't move right away. My whole body still buzzed with adrenaline, and my fingers were stiff from clutching my phone so tightly. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside. The first, a tall woman with a calm, serious face, introduced herself as Officer Miller, while the other, a younger man named Officer Tate, stood near the door scanning the parking lot. "Are you Hannah Reed?" she asked gently. I nodded, still struggling to find my voice. "You're safe now," she continued. "Tell me exactly what happened." I explained everything from the start. The cashier's note, realizing my keys were gone, the man following me, and how we hid until they arrived. Luis backed me up, describing the man's behavior, how he'd been watching me since I entered the store. The officers listened carefully, exchanging looks as they took notes. Then Officer Tate's radio crackled. "Dispatch. We have a vehicle matching the description heading westbound on Route 17. Requesting confirmation." "Confirmed," came the reply. "Black sedan. Possible suspect in vehicle thefts." My stomach dropped. "That's him," I said. "He drove a black sedan." Officer Miller nodded and spoke into her radio. "All units. Suspect vehicle identified. Proceed with caution." Then she turned back to me. "We'll handle it. For now, we're going to secure your car and collect evidence. You're not to leave until we clear the area. Understood?" I nodded again, too stunned to speak. As they stepped outside, Luis placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You did everything right," he said softly. "If you'd gone to your car just a few seconds earlier, who knows what would have happened?" His words sent a chill through me. I stared out the window, watching the officers check my car. The lights from their flashlights bounced across the pavement. I expected them to find nothing, maybe fingerprints or a broken lock, but what they found instead made my skin crawl. Officer Miller returned inside holding a folded piece of paper sealed in a plastic bag. "We found this on the front seat," she said. I frowned, confused. "What is it?" She hesitated for a moment before saying, "A note. It says, 'You left your door unlocked last week. I could have taken more than your keys.'" The world tilted slightly beneath me. My voice came out in a whisper. "Last week? What does that mean?" Luis looked as shocked as I felt. "You think he's been watching her?" he asked. Officer Miller nodded slowly. "It's possible. We've had similar reports nearby. Someone stealing car keys to enter victims' homes later. He might have followed you for days before tonight." My hands went cold. "He knew where I lived?" "Maybe," she said quietly. "But we'll find him. He's sloppy, and we have his fingerprints now. You're not alone in this." Those words barely registered. All I could think about was that note. How he knew about my door. How close he must have been without me ever noticing. Every memory from the past few weeks came rushing back. The time I thought I'd misplaced my keys, but found them on the counter. The strange feeling that my porch light flickered when I came home late. The car parked too long across the street. My chest tightened. He'd been there, watching, waiting. A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was my brother, Aaron. I hadn't even realized Luis had texted him. "Hannah, are you all right?" I'm on my way, he said firmly. Hearing his voice made me finally let out a shaky breath. I'm okay, I managed. The police are here. They found a note. His tone darkened. Don't move. Stay with them until I get there. When Aaron arrived 20 minutes later, still in his police jacket from another precinct, he stormed into the store, scanning the scene like a hawk. I could tell he was trying to stay composed, but his jaw was tight. He pulled me into a hug, whispering, "You scared me half to death." I finally broke down, my tears soaking his shoulder. He had my keys, Aaron. He knew where I lived. He pulled back slightly, his eyes fierce. Then he picked the wrong woman to mess with. The officers gave him a quick update. The suspect had been stopped by a patrol unit a few miles away, but he fled on foot after crashing his car. They found several stolen sets of keys, fake IDs, and burglary tools inside the vehicle. He was clearly targeting women traveling alone, taking their keys to break into their homes later when they least expected it. When Officer Miller confirmed they'd found my spare house key on him, I felt sick. He really was planning to come to my home, I said quietly. Aaron put a hand on my shoulder. You're safe now. They'll catch him. He won't hurt anyone else. For the next hour, I gave my full statement, trying to piece together every detail. The officers took the receipt Luis had written on and the surveillance footage from the store. By the time we finished, the clock read nearly 3 a.m. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by exhaustion and disbelief. When everything was done, Officer Miller handed me a small evidence envelope. Inside were my car keys. We're returning these to you, but you might want to change your locks at home, she said kindly. I looked down at them, the familiar keychain now feeling foreign and tainted. Something so small had nearly cost me everything. Aaron drove me home that night, his hand gripping the steering wheel tightly the entire way. When we pulled into my driveway, he insisted on checking the house before I went in. I stood outside under the porch light, staring at my front door. For the first time in my life, it didn't feel like home. It felt like a reminder of how easily safety can be taken. Before going inside, Aaron looked back at me and said, "He picked you because he thought you were easy to scare, but you didn't freeze. You listened. You survived. That's what matters." I nodded, his words slowly sinking in. He was right. Fear had nearly paralyzed me, but instinct and trusting that one small warning from a stranger had saved my life. That night, I changed every lock in my house before I even tried to sleep. And as the first light of dawn came through my window, I realized something powerful. Safety isn't about fear. It's about awareness and the courage to act when something doesn't feel right. The next morning, I woke up on my couch, still in yesterday's clothes, barely remembering how I had fallen asleep. The night's events replayed in flashes. The note, the man's eyes, the sound of my own heart pounding. For a few seconds, I tried to convince myself it had been a nightmare. But when I looked at the coffee table and saw the sealed evidence envelope with my car keys inside, reality hit me again. It had all happened. I had been one small step away from disaster. Aaron had stayed the night, sleeping in the guest room with his phone beside him. When I heard movement in the kitchen, I walked in to find him, on a call with the police. His expression was serious, but when he saw me, he gave a small, reassuring nod. "They caught him," he said once he hung up. My stomach twisted. "They caught who?" "The guy from the gas station," he replied. "They found him early this morning, hiding in an abandoned warehouse not far from Route 17. He tried to run again, but the K9 unit cornered him. They've identified him as Daniel Cross. He's been wanted for several break-ins across 3 states. The name meant nothing to me, but hearing it somehow made everything more real. "What did they find?" I asked softly. Aaron took a breath, looking reluctant to answer. "They found several items in his car and his hideout. Dozens of stolen keys, IDs, wallets, and personal notes. He kept records of his victims. He'd write down things like their schedules, where they lived, what cars they drove." I felt a cold shiver crawl down my back. "He wrote about them?" He nodded grimly. "Yeah, he was obsessed with control. And Hannah," he hesitated before continuing, "there was a page with your name on it." My knees went weak, and I sank into the nearest chair. "What did it say?" Aaron walked closer and placed a hand on my shoulder. "It said, She doesn't lock her door right away, follows a routine, drives alone on Fridays. He'd been watching you for at least 2 weeks. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. My mind flashed back to every little moment I'd brushed off. The flickering porch light, the feeling of being watched when I took the trash out at night, the small scratches I'd once noticed near my car handle and ignored. He hadn't just stolen my keys. He had studied me. I covered my face with my hands, shaking. He was planning something worse, wasn't he? Aaron's voice softened. That's what we think. He had tools with him that suggested he wasn't just stealing cars anymore. You were lucky, Hannah. That cashier saved your life. The thought of Luis made my chest tighten. His quiet warning had changed everything. Without him, I might have been another name in Daniel's notes. I picked up my phone immediately and texted Luis. They caught him. Thank you. You saved me. A few minutes later, he replied, I'm just glad you're okay. It was the right thing to do. Simple words, but they meant everything. Later that afternoon, the detectives asked me to come down to the station to identify some of the items they recovered. Aaron insisted on driving me. The ride there was quiet, except for the sound of the rain tapping on the windshield. My thoughts swirled like a storm, fear, anger, relief, all crashing into each other. When we arrived, Officer Miller met us at the door. I know this isn't easy, she said gently, but what you'll see will help close the case. Inside, on a long metal table, were rows of evidence bags labeled with case numbers. In one bag were my spare, house key, and a folded page with my name written across the top. The handwriting was sharp and messy. Below my name were short notes, times, dates, small details that made my skin crawl. It was proof of how close he had gotten. This man didn't just steal, Officer Miller explained. He studied his targets, mostly women who lived alone. He would follow them for days, sometimes weeks, learning their routines. Then he'd use their car keys as a way in. It was about control. He enjoyed watching them panic when things went missing. I stared at the bag for a long moment, then finally said, I guess I wasn't just unlucky. I was chosen. Aaron looked at me and shook his head. No, you weren't chosen. You were watched. There's a difference. You did everything right once you realized something was wrong. You listened. Officer Miller nodded. Your quick thinking and the cashier's warning probably stopped him from doing something far worse. Those words sank deep. For the first time, the fear started to fade, replaced by something stronger, a sense of power, of taking back control. As we were leaving the station, I turned to Aaron. He's behind bars now, right? He nodded. Yes, and with the evidence they have, he's not getting out anytime soon. That night, I sat by my window watching the rain pour down, the same kind of rain that had fallen the night before. Only this time, it didn't feel threatening. It felt cleansing, like the world was washing away what had happened. I picked up the small note Luis had given back to me. Smile and leave. That man has your car keys. The handwriting was shaky, but that sentence had saved my life. I decided to frame it, not as a reminder of fear, but of awareness. It was proof that even in moments of panic, listening to your instincts and to the courage of others could change everything. Before heading to bed, I called my mom to tell her I was okay. She cried softly on the other end of the line, thanking the heavens that I was safe. I told you, sweetheart, she said. The world isn't always kind, but there are still good people in it. I smiled through the tears. You're right, Mom. And I met one of them. That night, as I locked every door and window in my house, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Peace. The kind that comes from surviving something that could have destroyed you. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was someone who had faced fear head-on and walked away stronger. And as the storm outside faded into silence, I whispered to myself, never again will I ignore my instincts. In the weeks that followed, life slowly began to return to normal, though normal no longer meant what it used to. Every little sound at night made me pause. Every knock on the door made my pulse quicken. For the first few nights, I couldn't sleep without keeping the lights on. Even after Daniel's arrest, I carried that feeling of being watched, as if danger might still be hiding in the corners of my life. But over time, that fear started to shift into something else. Awareness, strength, and a deeper understanding of how fragile safety can be. Aaron checked in with me every day at first. Sometimes he came by after work, pretending he just wanted dinner, but I knew he was making sure I wasn't alone. His presence helped more than he probably realized. Mom called constantly too, offering to come stay with me, but I insisted I'd be okay. I didn't want to live in fear anymore. I wanted to take back the confidence I'd lost. The police finalized the case after a few weeks. Officer Miller called to let me know that Daniel had confessed to multiple counts of burglary, stalking, and attempted assault. There was enough evidence to keep him locked up for a long time. Hearing that brought me a kind of peace I hadn't felt since that night at the gas station. I thanked her for everything she and her team had done. She said something that stuck with me. "You were smart, Hannah. You listened when it mattered most. That's what saved you." It was strange because she was right. I wasn't stronger or braver than anyone else. I had just listened, first to Luis, then to my gut. I had trusted that feeling inside that told me something wasn't right, and that single decision had made all the difference. A few days later, I drove back to the gas station where it all happened. It felt surreal walking through those doors again. The air smelled the same, coffee, motor oil, and cold rain. But this time, it didn't feel threatening. Luis was behind the counter again, wearing the same faded name tag. When he saw me, his eyes widened with surprise and then softened into a smile. "I didn't think I'd see you again," he said. I smiled back. "I wanted to thank you properly. You saved my life." He looked down, almost embarrassed. "I just did what anyone should do." I shook my head. "No, not everyone would have risked warning me like that. Most people would have stayed quiet." He hesitated before speaking. "You weren't the first woman I saw him follow, you know, but you were the first who noticed. You trusted the warning." We stood there for a moment in silence, both of us remembering how that night had unfolded. I handed him a small gift I'd brought, a handwritten note and a gift card. He laughed nervously but accepted it, saying, "You didn't have to." "I know," I replied, "but I wanted to remind you that your courage mattered." As I drove away, the sky began to clear after days of steady rain. Sunlight broke through the clouds, and for the first time in a while, I felt genuinely light. It wasn't that the fear had disappeared. It was that I had learned how to live with it without letting it control me. That night, sitting on my couch with a cup of tea, I opened my journal. I wanted to write everything down while it was still fresh. The fear, the confusion, the moments of strength. Writing had always been my way of making sense of things, and this time, it felt like closing a chapter I needed to finish. I wrote about how quickly life can turn, how a normal evening can become something unforgettable. I wrote about trust, how it's easy to doubt your instincts until the moment you realize they're the only thing standing between you and danger. And I wrote about kindness, how one stranger's quiet bravery had changed everything. I also thought about the women Daniel had targeted before me, the ones who might not have been so lucky. That thought haunted me, but it also gave me purpose. I decided to start sharing my story, not because I wanted sympathy, but because I wanted to remind others to stay alert, to listen to their intuition, and to speak up when something feels off. In the weeks after, I joined a local community safety program where I talked about my experience. Standing in front of a small group of people, I could see the shock and recognition in their faces as I spoke. When I finished, a woman came up to me with tears in her eyes and said, "I've ignored my instincts before. I won't anymore." That's when I realized something powerful. What happened to me didn't have to just be a terrifying story. It could be a warning, a lesson, a reason for someone else to trust themselves. Maybe that was the reason I survived, to help someone else stay safe. Months passed, and little by little, I stopped feeling afraid to go out at night. I double-checked my locks out of habit, not fear. The gas station on Route 17 stopped being a place of panic in my mind and became a symbol of survival. And that crumpled receipt with the note, "Smile and leave, that man has your car keys," stayed framed on my desk as a daily reminder of how fast life can change and how one act of courage can alter everything. Now, whenever I tell this story, I don't focus on the terror anymore. I focus on what came after, the strength I found in fear, the kindness I found in a stranger, and the awareness that I'll never ignore my instincts again. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that safety isn't about living in fear. It's about living smart. Trust your gut, pay attention to what's around you, and never underestimate the power of a quiet warning. And if my story made you think, inspired you, or even just reminded you to stay aware, then do me one favor. Subscribe to my channel and comment below where you're watching from. Your support means the world to me, and sharing these stories might just help someone else stay safe too.